Today I am brokenhearted, angry, and frustrated, and I know many of you are too. I often hear the phrase thoughts and prayers. It's a nice thing to say when something tragic happens and you're at a loss for words. I've heard it a lot this week, and I heard someone say it again just this morning. But I wonder, let's say you were out taking a walk and came across a two-story house on fire, smoke coming from around the roof line, and you knew your neighbor was inside. What would you do? Call 911 if you had a phone with you, I suppose. But if you had the chance to rescue them, would you? Even just by pounding on their door and yelling to get their attention because they might not realize they're in danger. They may be downstairs, they may not have a clue. Or would you stand in their yard, sadly shaking your head, and announce to them, assuming they could even hear you, and would you speak loudly enough for everyone else in the neighborhood to hear? Would you say that you were keeping them in your thoughts and prayers? What would be the right thing to do, the courageous thing to do, the moral thing to do, and I dare say, the Christian thing to do? Or even setting aside all of those moral judgment calls, what would simply be the most pragmatic thing to do in order to prevent your neighbor from being harmed? Well, this week another mass shooting occurred in Uvalde, Texas, at Robb Elementary School in a fourth grade classroom. 19 elementary-aged school children and 2 adults and the shooter himself died. Others are still hospitalized. The suspect had a handgun and an AR-15 assault weapon with high-capacity ammunition magazines, all of which he had reportedly purchased on his 18th birthday. It was the deadliest mass shooting at an elementary school since a gunman killed 26 people, including 20 first graders, at Sandy Hook Elementary School in 2012. But let's not forget Parkland, Florida, because now we need to apparently distinguish between shootings at elementary schools and middle schools and high schools. In 2018, at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, 17 people died, and another 17 were shot but survived. Manuel Oliver, the parent of one of those students killed at Parkland, said this: "You will hear these politicians sending their thoughts and prayers, and some of them will say, 'Our hearts are with the families.'" Then Manuel said, "Well, guess what? The families don't need your freaking hearts. They need their kids, and their kids are not there anymore." 27 school shootings have taken place so far this year in America. Today's May 29th. That averages to a little over 5 shootings per month at schools. But let's review some other shootings in recent memory. I think we need to hear this. In Buffalo on May 14th, 2 weeks ago, a white gunman killed 10 black people inside a supermarket in a racially motivated attack. In New York City on April 12th, 6 weeks ago, 23 people were wounded when a 62-year-old man activated a smoke bomb and opened fire in a subway. In Oxford, Michigan on November 30th of last year, 4 students were killed and 7 other people were wounded after a teenager opened fire at a high school. In Indianapolis on April 16th of last year, a former FedEx employee shot 8 people dead and injured several others at a shipping facility. In Los Angeles on March 31st of last year, 4 people were killed, one of them a child, in a shooting at an office building. In Boulder, Colorado on March 22nd of last year, a mass shooting at a supermarket left 10 people dead, including a police officer. In Atlanta, on March 16th of last year, 8 people, including 6 women of Asian descent, were shot dead in a string of attacks at day spas. In Milwaukee on February 26th of 2020, a gunman opened fire at the Molson Coors Beverage Company brewing complex, killing 5 coworkers before he committed suicide. In Dayton, Ohio on August 4th, 2019, a gunman dressed in body armor opened fire in the downtown area of Dayton, killing 9 people, including his own sister. In El Paso, Texas, on August 3rd, 2019, a man fatally shot 22 people at a Walmart store. A statement that was written by the suspect called the attack a response to the Hispanic invasion. In Virginia Beach, Virginia, on May 31st, 2019, a disgruntled public utility employee opened fire on coworkers at a municipal building, killing 12 people. In Aurora, Colorado, on February 15th, 2019, a man opened fire at a factory after being fired, killing 5 of his former coworkers. In Thousand Oaks, California, on November 2018, a former Marine combat veteran killed 12 people in a bar before killing himself. And in Pittsburgh, on October 27th, 2018, a gunman entered the Tree of Life Synagogue and fired on congregants gathered for a Sabbath service, killing 11 people. There's more, much more, but I'll stop there. Tired of hearing about it? Me too. Were thoughts and prayers offered? You bet, every single time. Were any laws or regulations changed in any significant way that might make it more difficult to acquire weapons, even by people with a history of violence or instability? If there were any at all, apparently it wasn't enough. Does it make you angry and frustrated? Do you know how easy it is to buy an AR-15 automatic rifle? How long it takes to do that? In most states, it's easier and faster than getting a driver's license. It's easier than voting in many states, easier than applying for a credit card, easier than getting a license for your dog in many places. It's definitely easier than buying Sudafed at the drugstore. It's easier than getting a hunting and fishing license, easier than buying alcohol because you only need to be 18 years old to buy a gun. I'm still processing my anger and frustration about those children and adults who were killed in Uvalde on Tuesday, and all of those other tragedies, because I'm just as angry and frustrated at myself as anyone else. And I'm angry and frustrated at the church. Not at our church specifically, but members of any and every faith community for not using our collective voices and influence to help create lasting, sensible change that could make a real difference and save lives. I'm angry and frustrated by our apparent complacency, by our tacit understanding that these things just happen. Now, don't get me wrong, we always acknowledge that it is shocking and horrible when this happens, but so often in the very next breath we behave like we have no idea about how we are supposed to keep it from happening, as if it's just beyond our control, like the path of the sun across the sky, as if we are helpless to change things, because we don't know the ways of the world or something, apparently. But we're not clueless. We know the ways of the world. Everyone knows that money talks. And this is not a partisan statement because both Democrats and Republicans receive ridiculous amounts of money from gun manufacturers and the various PACs they control, the political action committees, with innocuous sounding names like the Alliance for Gun Responsibility. So I'm angry and frustrated by politicians who sell us the fiction that restricting the sale of assault rifles, tools of warfare, is somehow an infringement on my rights, when in every other nation that does restrict the sale of assault rifles, no one seems to feel like their rights are being denied. You want to guess the only other country in the world besides the United States with no restrictions on buying an automatic rifle? Yemen. Now, that's not to say mass shootings don't happen in other countries with stricter gun laws. Of course they do. Usually committed by insurgents, though, or as acts of political or religious terrorism. But we are kidding ourselves if we think any other country comes even close to us in terms of how easy it is to buy a weapon that is specifically designed to kill a lot of people very quickly. So why should we be shocked when that happens with sickening regularity? I'm angry and frustrated by those who claim that mass shootings are primarily a mental health issue. Now, clearly, the people who perpetuate mass shootings, do have mental health problems, then wouldn't it be wonderful if we made mental health treatment a higher priority as a matter of public policy? But saying it's a mental health issue is a lot like saying that a person who has no business driving a car, perhaps because of a debility, no fault of their own, has the right to drive a car anyway. No, we actually have rules about who can drive a car and who can't. Why? To keep people safe. But we don't have hard and fast rules about assessing the state of someone's mental health before they are able to buy a gun, any gun. So I'm angry and frustrated at the idea that our thoughts and our prayers could ever seem to be enough for the victims of mass shootings and their families and their communities. We need to do much more than offer thoughts and prayers. We need to act. Now, one form of action is to gather with others who share your concern. On Thursday night at 7 p.m., Salem Church is holding a community conversation on gun violence prevention. It will include speakers from the Peace Center, and State Representative Steve Santaserio will be there, along with other officials. Now, let me be clear, this is a nonpartisan event. You should come to listen and to learn and just to be present, to represent Salem and represent yourself as someone who does more than offer thoughts and prayers. People are frightened. Our neighbors with children and grandchildren in schools are fearful. The children are afraid. So at a gathering like this, we can be there with them and for them. No one should live in fear. And this is a moment when we can demonstrate courage and hope and the power of our love of neighbor. Another form of action is to make a few phone calls to the offices of our state and federal legislators. Now, if you've never called an elected official before, don't worry, it is easy. Whether or not you voted for them, they still work for you. And their job is to listen to you and to represent you and to work on legislation that matters to you. They need to know how you feel and that you are holding them accountable for common sense laws that will protect our children. Their contact info is easy to find online. We're going to show a slide with that later. If they hear nothing, if they hear crickets, then they can safely assume no one cares, that you don't care. But I know you care because you're here today, because you believe in something greater than yourself, because you do love your neighbor, whether they live here or wherever your neighborhood happens to be, or in Buffalo, or in Uvalde. If today you're also feeling the way I feel, if you're grieving, if you're brokenhearted, if you're frustrated, if you're angry, let's channel that together to being agents of change. Remember that we are always called to act in ways that make God's kingdom of peace and justice and hope and love a reality in our broken and hurting world. We are far more than a collection of thoughts and prayers, as genuine as our thoughts and prayers may be. The house is on fire. It's time to act.